The fountain is still running. I need you to understand that before anything else. Greenfield Crossing Mall closed to the public on March 14th, 2025. The last Cinnabon pulled out in February. The last JCPenney associate turned in her vest on a Wednesday and cried in the parking lot because she'd worked there for 22 years, and nobody from corporate even called. The escalators stopped. The lights in the food court went to emergency only. The property management company in Indianapolis changed the locks, and the website just started saying, "Exciting redevelopment opportunities" in that font they always use when something is already dead, and they want you to feel good about the corpse. But the fountain is still running. 3 tiers of poured concrete with fake marble facing and a copper spout shaped like a little boy holding a fish, green with patina and mineral deposits. It sits in the center of the main atrium, right below the skylight. And even now, right now, tonight, as I'm writing this, it is circulating approximately 400 gallons of water in a loop that feeds through a pump system in the maintenance sub-level that nobody asked me to service and that I have been specifically told not to touch. My name is Darcy Holcomb. I'm 43. I have an associate's degree in dental hygiene from Ivy Tech that I finished in 2011 and never used because I couldn't afford the licensing exam fees. And then the years started going and now it's too late. And I've made peace with that in the way you make peace with anything, which is by not thinking about it. I clean buildings. I've cleaned buildings for Alliance Facility Services since 2019, and they contract me out to whoever needs overnight maintenance in the greater Indianapolis metro and surrounding counties. I've cleaned a Honda parts warehouse in Greensburg. I've cleaned a data center in Plainfield where I wasn't allowed to enter certain rooms and the air tasted like static. I've cleaned an Amazon sort facility where I once found a human tooth in a conveyor belt joint, and my supervisor told me to log it as organic debris and keep moving. I'm telling you this so you understand that I'm not someone who startles easily, and I'm not someone who looks for trouble because I don't have the energy for trouble. I go where they send me. I do what they tell me. I go home to my apartment in Shelbyville and I watch whatever's auto-playing on my phone until I fall asleep at 6 a.m. with the curtains taped shut. That's the job. That's the life. 3 months ago, Alliance got the contract for Greenfield Crossing. The mall is on State Road 9, just south of the I-70 interchange, in one of those stretches of Hancock County where the cornfields gave up and turned into frontage roads and chain restaurants, and then the chain restaurants gave up too. You know the landscape. You've driven through it. It's the part of Indiana that looks like someone started building a suburb and then wandered off. The Walmart across the highway is still open. The Cracker Barrel is still open. But the mall is done, and when you pull into the parking lot at 10:45 p.m. and your headlights are the only light source in 8 acres of cracked asphalt, you feel the doneness of it in your body. Like the air pressure is different over dead commerce. Like the building is exhaling. They gave me a key card and a 4-digit code and a laminated sheet. I need to tell you about the laminated sheet. My site supervisor is a guy named Prater. I've never met him in person. He communicates exclusively through a scheduling app, and occasionally by text messages that autocorrect has brutalized into surrealist poetry. When I got the Greenfield assignment, Prater sent me a text that said, "Sheet in locker 4 and custodial, follow it exact, don't freestyle." Then a second message. "The security company handles security stuff, so don't worry about any of that, just clean." Then a third. "Mall still has water features active for structural reasons, do not interact with those." For structural reasons. I didn't think about it. I drove out. I parked. I let myself in through the service entrance near the old Sears anchor. Sears, which had been dead even longer than everything else. A full year ahead of the pack, visionary in its decay. The hallway smelled like mildew and floor sealant and the particular sweetness of retail carpet, slowly returning to chemical soup. I found custodial. I found locker 4. The laminated sheet was in there, along with a flashlight, a ring of subkeys for the individual stores, and a two-way radio tuned to a channel labeled SEC in silver Sharpie. I read the sheet under the fluorescent light that was buzzing at a frequency I could feel in my fillings. It was typed, not printed from a computer. Typed on a typewriter with that slightly uneven impression you get from a manual ribbon machine. Someone had then laminated it, and the lamination was yellowed and starting to separate at one corner. This was not a new document. This had been in that locker for years, maybe decades. The mall opened in 1987. The lamination looked about right for the 90s. It read, Greenfield Crossing Mall, Overnight Maintenance Protocol. Effective hours, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Begin your shift at the service entrance, Sears Wing, East. Sign the intake log on the clipboard by the door. If there is no clipboard, do not enter. Radio security on the SEC channel and wait in your car until they confirm the clipboard is in place. Cleaning route proceeds clockwise from Sears Wing North Corridor, Food Court, West Anchor, J.C. Penney. South Corridor Main Atrium, return to Sears Wing. Do not deviate from this order. Do not skip sections. Do not reverse direction. Overhead lights in the common areas will be set to 40% by security before your arrival. If any section is fully dark when you enter it, leave that section. Radio security, and continue to the next section in order. Return to the skipped section only if security confirms the lights have been restored. If they do not confirm within 1 hour, skip that section for the night entirely. You will hear the fountain in the main atrium throughout your shift. This is normal. The fountain operates on a dedicated system and will not be shut off. Do not approach the fountain closer than the planter ring, the circular bench approximately 15 feet from the fountain base. Do not touch the water. Do not throw anything into the water. Do not attempt to retrieve anything you see in the water. Between midnight and 4 a.m., do not look directly into the fountain pool. You may look at the fountain structure above the water line. You may look at the floor near the fountain. Do not allow your direct line of sight to meet the surface of the water. If you are cleaning the main atrium during these hours, orient your work so that your back is to the fountain. If you hear a sound from the fountain that is not water, a voice, a tapping, a sound like wet breathing, radio security immediately. They will advise you. Follow their instructions exactly and without questions. The store formerly occupied by Walden Books, Unit 1 to 14 North Corridor, is permanently locked. You do not have a key. Do not clean it. Do not look through the gate. If the gate is open, do not enter. Radio security. The food court restrooms are not part of your cleaning route. They are handled by a separate service. Do not enter them. You may take your break in the custodial room only. Do not eat or drink in the common areas. At the end of your shift, return all equipment to Locker 4, sign out on the clipboard, and exit through the Sears Wing service entrance. Do not exit through any other door. If the service entrance is locked from the outside when you attempt to leave, radio security. Do not attempt to force the door. Do not seek an alternate exit. Security contact is available on the SEC channel from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. You will not see security staff during your shift. This is standard. They monitor remotely. I read it twice. I put it back in the locker. I thought, this is weird, but every building has weird rules, and I've followed stranger ones for worse pay. The data center in Plainfield had a rule about not humming in certain hallways. The Amazon facility had a rule about not making eye contact with cameras. You learn not to ask. Asking doesn't increase your hourly rate. I grabbed my cart, loaded my supplies, and started the route. The thing about a dead mall at night is that it's not quiet. I expected quiet, and what I got was a symphony of mechanical grief. The HVAC system was still partially active, cycling air through ducts that popped and ticked with thermal expansion. The emergency lighting buzzed at slightly different frequencies depending on which wing you were in. So moving through the building was like walking through a gradient of tinnitus. Water dripped somewhere in the Sears wing. Not the fountain, something else. A pipe or a condensation line. And the drip echoed off the terrazzo floors in a way that made it sound like footsteps if you weren't paying attention, and like dripping water if you were, and like footsteps again the moment you stopped paying attention. And under all of it, always, the fountain. That low, continuous liquid murmur coming from the atrium like a pulse, not loud, not dramatic, just there. The way your own heartbeat is there, ignorable until you notice it, and then impossible to unnotice. I cleaned the Sears wing first. Empty display fixtures, dust on everything, the smell of old department store that's basically just the ghost of perfume samples and carpet adhesive. Easy work. Mop the terrazzo in the corridors, dust the benches, empty the trash cans that have no trash in them because there's no one to make trash. Then north up the corridor toward the food court. North corridor is where Walden Books used to be. Unit 1-14. I didn't look through the gate. The rule said don't look through the gate, and I didn't look through the gate. But I'll tell you what I noticed in my peripheral vision as I pushed the mop bucket past it. The gate was down, the security mesh kind of gate that all mall stores have, and behind it was dark. Genuinely dark. Not 40% light dark, but the power is cut dark. And the air near it was cold, not HVAC cold. Cold like a window was open in January. Except there are no windows in a mall corridor, and it was April and 58 degrees outside. I kept moving. The food court was vast and sad, and I cleaned it efficiently because there was nothing to clean. I wiped down tables that no one had eaten at in months. I mopped under a Sparrow sign that still had the menu prices lit up. $7.49 for a slice and a drink. A transaction that would never again occur in this location or any location because that Sbarro was gone and every other Sbarro was going or gone, and I thought about how strange it is that a price can outlive the thing it was attached to, that $7.49 would just hang there in orange backlit plastic until someone finally cut the power or the LEDs died, whichever came first. I skipped the food court restrooms per the rules. I did not think about why. West Anchor, JCPenney, empty. South Corridor, empty. Everything by the book. Then the main atrium. The fountain was running. Of course it was. I could hear it from 2 corridors away, getting louder as I approached. And when I turned the corner from South Corridor into the atrium, there it was. Centered under the skylight, 3 tiers, the little green copper boy with his fish. Water arcing from the fish's mouth into the top basin and cascading down. The emergency lighting caught the water and threw refracted patterns on the ceiling, and the closed storefronts and the dead kiosks, and my face and my hands and everywhere. It was 12:20 a.m. I was in the window, the don't look window, midnight to 4. I set up my work facing away from the fountain, like the rules said, mopped the atrium floor in careful arcs working outward from the South Corridor entrance, kept my back to it. The sound of the water was louder here, obviously, and it had a quality I hadn't noticed from a distance. A kind of thickness, like the water was heavier than water should be, like the cascading had too much bass in it. But that's probably just acoustics. The atrium has a 40-foot ceiling and hard surfaces on every side. Sound does strange things in spaces like that. I cleaned. I listened to the water. I did not look. At 12:45, I heard something that was not water. It was brief. A single syllable, or maybe not even a syllable. A vocalization. Like someone starting to say a word and then stopping. It came from behind me. From the fountain. It had the wet, distorted quality of a sound made near a water surface. The way your voice sounds different when you talk in a swimming pool, close to the water line. I stopped mopping. I stood very still. The water cascaded. The HVAC clicked. The emergency lights buzzed. Nothing else. I picked up the radio. Security? This is Darcy on maintenance. I'm in the main atrium. I heard something from the fountain. Might have been a vocalization. Over. Static for 5 seconds. Then a voice, male, middle-aged, bored-sounding. Copy, Darcy. Note the time in your log. Continue your route. Keep your orientation as posted. Over. That's it? I said, and I know I wasn't supposed to ask questions. The sheet said, follow their instructions without questions, but it came out before I could stop it. That's it. You're doing fine. Over and out. I finished the atrium with my back to the fountain. I did not hear the sound again. I completed my route, returned to custodial, signed out, drove home. Sat in my car in the apartment parking lot for 20 minutes before going inside because my hands were shaking, and I didn't want to shake in my apartment. My apartment is where I'm supposed to feel okay. I didn't want to contaminate it. The second week was when Bethany started. I should tell you about Bethany because she's the reason any of this went the way it did, and because I think people need to understand that I didn't do this alone. I'm not the solitary protagonist of this story. I'm the person telling it, which is different. Bethany Rourke was 26, and she'd been with Alliance for about 8 months when they added her to the Greenfield Crossing rotation. We overlapped on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The mall was big enough that the contract called for 2 cleaners on certain nights to keep the schedule on track. She was tall, had her hair in a short natural cut, and she wore these big over-ear headphones around her neck at all times but never actually put them on during a shift. She told me they were a social prop. If someone was bothering her, she'd put them on and the conversation was over. I liked that. I liked her. She was the kind of person who was smarter than her situation and knew it and was angry about it in a way that was energizing rather than corrosive. The fountain thing is insane, she said to me on her second night, standing in custodial, reading the laminated sheet. You know that, right? This is insane. It's unusual, I said. Darcy, it says don't look at water. For 4 hours. In the middle of a building I'm supposed to be cleaning. That's not unusual. That's institutional. Institutional how? Like, it was instituted. Somebody made a decision. Somebody typed this on a typewriter, which means somebody sat down and thought about the specific wording of, do not allow your direct line of sight to meet the surface of the water. And that person had a reason, and I want to know the reason. The reason is, that's the rule. You sound like my mom. Your mom sounds like a smart woman. Bethany put the sheet back. She didn't argue further that night, but she had a look on her face that I recognized from every job I've ever worked with someone in their 20s. The look of someone who hasn't yet learned that curiosity in a workplace is a luxury good, and we are not luxury people. We cleaned together. She took the north half of the route, I took the south, and we met in the middle at the atrium and did it together, both facing away from the fountain, mopping in tandem like some kind of sad synchronized routine. And it was. I'll say it. It was nice, having someone there. The mall felt less like a throat when there were 2 of you in it. On our third shared shift, Bethany said, I've been looking into this mall. We were in the food court. She was wiping down the Sparrow counter. I was doing the floors. Looking into it how? County records, news archives. The Greenfield Reporter has a digital archive going back to 1994. This mall has a history. Every building has a history. Not like this. She stopped wiping. A girl went missing here in 1998. Shelby Linden, 14 years old. She was here with friends on a Saturday afternoon. They split up to go to different stores. She never reconnected with them. Her friends assumed she'd gotten a ride home. Her parents assumed she was still with her friends. Nobody realized she was missing for almost 6 hours. That's horrible. But that's a missing persons case, not a... They found her shoes by the fountain. I didn't say anything. Just her shoes, white Adidas, placed neatly side by side on the planter ring, not thrown, not kicked off, placed, like she'd taken them off carefully before whatever happened. Bethany. There was another one, 2004, a maintenance worker, night shift. He signed in on the clipboard but never signed out. His car was in the lot the next morning. His mop bucket was in the atrium, tipped over, water everywhere. They never found him. He wasn't even reported as missing for 3 days because he didn't have family in the area. And Alliance, it was a different company then, but the same kind of company. They just assumed he quit. How do you know it was Alliance? It wasn't Alliance. It was called Hoosier Clean. Same model, though. Same kind of contract worker. Same kind of person nobody follows up on. She looked at me when she said that, and I felt it land. The same kind of person nobody follows up on. That's us. That's me. That's the category. There's a pattern, she said. I found 4 incidents total. 1993, 1998, 2004, 2011. All in or near the atrium, all connected to the fountain. The 93 one is the strangest because it happened during business hours. A janitor, mall employee, walked into the fountain pool during the lunch rush. Just walked right in, fully clothed. Witnesses said he was staring down into the water and then he just stepped over the planter ring and walked in. The water's only 18 inches deep. He should have just been standing in it looking foolish. But people said he went down. Like the floor of the pool wasn't where it should have been. Like it was deeper than it looked. They pulled him out. 2 guys from the Foot Locker grabbed him, and he was soaked up to his shoulders, in 18 inches of water. That's not possible. He quit the next day, moved out of state. I couldn't find any further record of him. I leaned on my mop. The food court hummed. Somewhere beyond the walls, the fountain ran and ran. What are you suggesting we do with this information? I asked. I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm just telling you what I found, because I think you and I should be making decisions based on information, not laminated sheets from the 90s. For 2 more weeks, I followed the rules. Bethany followed the rules. We cleaned, we avoided, we oriented ourselves correctly, we did not look. The fountain made its sounds. Always water, mostly just water, except for occasional moments when the acoustics would align in a way that almost produced a word, or a hum, or a rhythm that was too regular to be random. I radioed security twice more. Both times I got the same bored male voice, the same instructions. Note the time, continue your route, maintain orientation. I started dreaming about the fountain, not nightmares. Just the sound of it, playing through dreams that were otherwise normal. I'd be dreaming about grocery shopping or driving or sitting in a dentist's chair getting my teeth cleaned by some version of myself that had passed the licensing exam. And underneath it all, the sound of water cascading through 3 tiers. That heavy, bassy, too thick water sound. And in the dream I would think, oh, I'm at work even though I wasn't. I didn't tell Bethany about the dreams. She would have made it mean something. What I did tell her was this. On a night in mid-May, a Tuesday, I was cleaning the south corridor and I saw a light on in one of the empty storefronts. Not an emergency light. A warm, yellowish light, like an incandescent bulb, coming from behind the security gate of what used to be a store called Claire's, the jewelry and accessories place for teenage girls. The gate was down, the light was behind it, and in the light, I could see the interior of the store, and it was stocked, fully stocked. Earrings on spinning racks, hair accessories in bins, those big sunglasses displays, like the store had never closed. like it was ready for a Saturday morning rush of 12-year-olds with birthday money. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, looking at it. Then the light went off, not dimmed, off like a switch. And in the darkness behind the gate I heard the fountain, not from the atrium 100 yards away, from inside the store, the sound of cascading water, close and enclosed, like there was a fountain inside Claire's. I radioed security. There was a light in a closed storefront, South Corridor, the old Claire's. I also heard water inside the unit. Over. A pause. Then, copy. Which did you observe first? The light or the water? The light. Did you approach the gate? No. Good. Proceed to the atrium and complete your route. Do not return to South Corridor tonight. Over. I told Bethany the next time I saw her. She wrote it down in a notebook she'd started keeping. She had 6 pages of notes by then. Times, dates, observations, mine and hers. She'd started mapping the incidents on a floor plan she'd found in the custodial closet, an old evacuation map from when the mall was operational. It's spreading, she said. What is? Whatever the fountain is. Whatever's in the fountain. It was in the atrium in the 90s. Now it's in Claire's. That's 80 feet from the fountain, easy, and Walden books. Unit 1 to 14, the one we're not supposed to look into. That's in the North Corridor. That's even farther. We don't know what's in Walden books. The rule just says it's locked. The rule says don't look through the gate. Why would you tell someone not to look through the gate of an empty bookstore unless there was something to see? I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. And the food court restrooms, she continued. Another area we can't enter. Handled by a separate service. What service? Have you ever seen evidence of another service coming through here? Any other cleaning supplies? Any other sign-ins on the clipboard? I hadn't. There is no other service, Bethany said. Nobody's cleaning those restrooms. That rule exists to keep us out of them. She was right. I knew she was right. And I knew where this was heading, and I should have stopped it. And I'm going to carry the fact that I didn't stop it for whatever's left of my life. June 2nd, a Thursday. We were both on shift. Bethany had brought a small handheld mirror. The kind you'd find at a dollar store, round, with a pink plastic handle. I'm going to look at the fountain, she said. We were in custodial. It was 11:30. We hadn't started the route yet. No, I said. Not directly. That's what the rule prohibits. Direct line of sight meeting the surface. So I'm going to use the mirror. Indirect observation. The rule doesn't say anything about reflections. Bethany, the rule is telling you not to look because there's something dangerous about looking. The mirror doesn't change that. The mirror changes the geometry, and the geometry matters. Otherwise, why would they be so specific about direct line of sight? They're not telling us not to know what's in the fountain. They're telling us not to create a specific spatial relationship between our eyes and the water. The mirror breaks that relationship. She'd thought about this. She'd been thinking about it for weeks. I could see it in the way she held the mirror, not casually, not dramatically, but with the focused calm of someone who has rehearsed a decision until the fear has been sanded down to a dull, manageable grit. What if you're wrong about the geometry? I said. Then I'll see water in a mirror and nothing will happen and we'll both feel stupid. And if you're right, if there is something to see, then we'll know what we're dealing with. And we'll be able to make real choices instead of following a typewritten page that someone made before either of us was cleaning this building. Here is the thing I need you to understand about that moment. I could have said no. I could have refused to participate, radioed security, threatened to report her, walked out. I had options. But Bethany was the only person I'd had a real conversation with in months. She was the only person who treated my job like it had a person attached to it. and she was offering me something that I didn't know I was starving for until she put it in front of me. The chance to be someone who understands what's happening to her, rather than someone who mops around the mystery and goes home. I said yes. We started the route at 11 o'clock, exactly on schedule. Clockwise, Sears to north to food court to west to south. We cleaned every section properly because Bethany said, and she was right, that if we were going to break one rule, we should follow every other rule perfectly so that whatever was monitoring us, security, the building, whatever, would see compliance everywhere except the single point of deviation. We reached the main atrium at 12:35 a.m. The fountain was running, the skylight above was black, the emergency lights painted everything in that 40% amber that makes a dead mall look like an aquarium. Bethany set up at the planter ring, 15 feet from the fountain base, the maximum allowed proximity. I stood behind her, another 5 feet back. She held the mirror at arm's length, angling it to catch the surface of the fountain pool. "I can see the water," she said. "Just water. The bottom of the pool. It's tiled, like blue mosaic tile. There's coins in there, pennies mostly, some quarters. People threw coins in when it was open, probably never cleaned them out." "Yeah." She adjusted the angle. "Okay, I'm going to try to get a broader view, more of the surface." She tilted the mirror. And then she said nothing for about 8 seconds. "Bethany, there's someone in the water." I felt my whole body go cold from the stomach outward, like I'd swallowed ice. "There's someone standing in the water," she said, her voice very controlled, very level, the voice of someone choosing not to scream. "In the mirror, not. I can't see them when I look at the fountain directly, just the water and the structure. But in the mirror there's a person, standing in the pool, the water's up to their waist. They're looking down. Bethany, put the mirror down. It's a girl, a teenager. She's not wearing shoes." Everything in me went tight. She's looking down into the water, like she's watching something below her. Oh God, she's smiling, Darcy. She's looking down and smiling like she sees something wonderful. "Put the mirror down now." "There are others." Bethany's voice changed, dropped, went flat in a way that scared me more than any tremor would have. "Behind her, farther back. They're all standing in the pool, but the pool is... In the mirror, the pool is deep, Darcy. It goes way down. They're at different depths. Some of them are waist deep, and some are chest deep, and the ones in the back are up to their necks, and they're all looking down, and they're all... The mirror cracked. I heard it. A sharp, clean sound like a fingernail tapping glass, and Bethany dropped it. And it hit the terrazzo, and the mirror was in 3 pieces, and Bethany was holding her hand, and there was a thin line of blood across her palm where a shard had caught her. "It cracked," she said, staring at the pieces. "I didn't squeeze it. It cracked on its own." From the fountain behind us, I heard the sound. Not almost a word this time. A word. Clear and close, spoken just above the water surface with the wet, intimate resonance of a mouth right next to your ear. More. I grabbed Bethany. We left the atrium. We left the mop buckets, the cart, everything. We went straight to custodial, and I radioed security with hands that were not shaking because they had gone past shaking into a kind of rigid, vibrating stillness. "Security, this is Darcy. My partner and I had an incident in the atrium. We used a reflective surface to observe the fountain pool. We saw figures in the water. The mirror broke. We heard a vocalization. We are in custodial. Over." The pause was longer this time. 15 seconds. 20. Then a different voice. Not the bored man. A woman, older, clipped, with the very faint trace of a southern Indiana accent. That slight softening of vowels you get south of Bloomington. "Darcy, this is Director Wells. How many figures did your partner observe? She said, multiple. A teenager and then others behind her, in the pool, at different depths. Did your partner describe their orientation? They were looking down, into the water. Were any of them looking up? The question hit me in a way I can't fully explain. It wasn't just a question. It was a diagnostic. She was checking for something specific, and the specific thing she was checking for was worse than what we'd seen. And the fact that there was a worse thing was the most frightening piece of information I'd received all night. No, I said. She said they were all looking down. Good, that's good. Listen to me carefully. You and your partner are going to finish your shift. You are not going to return to the atrium tonight. Leave your equipment where it is. Clean only the custodial room. Sign out at 5 a.m. as normal. When you return for your next shift, the equipment will be back in custodial. Do not discuss what you saw with anyone outside this channel. Do you understand? I want to know what's in the fountain. You saw what's in the fountain. I want to know why. Darcy. Her voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who has had this exact conversation before and knows exactly how it goes and is tired of it in a way that has nothing to do with patience and everything to do with grief. The fountain has been running since 1987. It was running before the mall was built. The mall was built around it. The development company didn't install the fountain. They found it. Found it? The groundwater table in this part of Hancock County is unusual. When they broke ground for the mall, they hit a spring, an upwelling. The water was already moving in a circular pattern, already cycling. The developer, a man named Lyle Kirchner. He's been dead since 2009. He thought it was an opportunity. He built the fountain over the spring, dressed it up, made it a feature. He didn't know what it was. What is it? The water remembers. A pause. That's the simplest way I can say it. The water in that system retains an impression of the people who interact with it. Not a copy, not a ghost. An impression, like a photograph, but dimensional. And the impressions accumulate. And they're aware, in the way a photograph is not. They watch, they wait, they want. Want what? To be looked at, to be seen. That's the vector, Darcy. That's what the rules are managing. The impressions in the water can only interact with the living through direct visual contact with the surface. When someone looks into the pool during active hours, midnight to 4, when the upwelling pressure is highest, the impressions can reach, not physically, perceptually. They can make you see what they see. They can show you what's below the surface. And what's below the surface is very beautiful and very deep. And the people who see it want to go deeper, and they do not stop wanting. Shelby Linden, I said. She looked. She saw. She walked in. The water was 18 inches deep and she went under and she did not come back up. We recovered her shoes. The maintenance worker in 2004? Same. He was mopping too close. Caught a glimpse. We found his mop bucket. Who is we? My organization has been managing this site since 1993. We were contracted after the first incident. The janitor who walked in during business hours and was pulled out by bystanders. He survived because other people were present and physically intervened. After that, the mall ownership brought us in. We wrote the protocols, we installed the lighting system. We lobbied to keep the mall open as long as possible because a functioning mall gives us cover for continuous monitoring. When the mall closed, we negotiated the alliance contract to ensure overnight human presence. Why do you need human presence? Because the impressions are drawn to observation. If no one is in the building, they expand. They move outward from the fountain. They begin to appear in other water sources, pipes, drains, condensation. You've already noticed the anomaly in the Claire's unit. That's expansion, Darcy. That's what happens when the impressions go unseen for too long. They reach for eyes. Our protocols keep them contained to the fountain by providing controlled, limited human proximity, close enough to keep them centered, distant enough to keep you safe. I sat down on the custodial room floor. Bethany was next to me, holding a paper towel to her cut hand, listening. "So we're bait," I said. "You're a boundary. You're the reason the fountain stays the fountain instead of becoming the building." Bethany quit. Not that night. She finished the shift, signed out, drove home. But she texted me the next morning and said she was done with Greenfield Crossing and done with Alliance, and was moving to her sister's place in Louisville and getting a job that didn't involve being a perceptual containment system for a haunted aquifer. I didn't blame her. I still don't. She was right to leave. She was the smarter one. I stayed. I'm going to tell you why I stayed, and it's not going to sound noble because it isn't. I stayed because the job paid $19.50 an hour and my rent is $875 a month. And my car payment is $340. And I have a credit card balance that I've been making minimum payments on since 2022. And I am 43 years old, and I do not have the energy to start over. I stayed because Director Wells offered me a $3.50 raise to continue the rotation, and $3.50 an hour is $140 a week, is $560 a month, is the difference between drowning and treading water. I stayed because this is the economy. This is the actual economy. You work with what you have, and what I have is a mop and a laminated sheet, and the ability to not look at water. I stayed because where else was I going to go? After Bethany left, things changed. Not dramatically. Dramatically would have been easier, would have given me a clean reason to run. Instead, things changed in the way mold grows. Slowly. Across surfaces you don't check often enough. The fountain got louder. Not suddenly, not mechanically. There was no moment where the volume jumped. But over the course of June and into July, I became aware that I could hear it from the parking lot. Faintly, like someone left a faucet on somewhere. I started hearing it in my car on the drive home if the radio was off. I started hearing it in my apartment, which is 11 miles from the mall. And I know that's not physically possible. Sound doesn't carry 11 miles through walls and distance and highway noise. But I heard it. In the silence between the air conditioner cycling off and the refrigerator compressor kicking on in that little pocket of quiet, there it was, cascading. 3 tiers, heavy water. I radioed Wells about it. She said it was perceptual residue, and that it would fade if I took 3 days off, which I did, and it didn't fade, which I didn't tell her because I needed the hours. In July, the expansion got worse. The Claire's unit developed condensation on its security gate, water beading on the metal mesh, dripping down, pooling on the terrazzo in a pattern that was too regular, too circular. I reported it. The next night, the gate had been draped in black plastic sheeting, the kind you use for painting or construction. I could still hear water behind it. Then the music store. Then the GNC. Then the old Sears portrait studio, tucked in the back of the anchor wing, a room I'd been cleaning without incident for months. I showed up one Tuesday, and there was a 1/4 inch of standing water on the floor. I mopped it up. The next night it was back. I mopped it again. The third night the water was warm. I radioed Wells. The Sears portrait studio has standing water, warm, recurring. How warm? Like body temperature, maybe. I can feel it through my shoes. Silence. Then, we're going to adjust your route. Remove the portrait studio. Don't enter it going forward. That's 4 areas off my route now. What happens when it's 5? 10? What happens when there's nowhere left to clean? Then we reassess. Reassess how? Darcy, the protocols have contained this site for over 30 years. There have been fluctuation periods before. The water ebbs and flows. Expansion happens and then it contracts. This is a high period. It will pass. And if it doesn't? She didn't answer. August. August is when I stopped trusting the protocols. It was a Saturday night, solo shift. I was in the food court, which had been stable, which had been fine, which was the one area I still felt okay in. I was wiping down the tables and listening to the fountain 2 corridors away and thinking about absolutely nothing, which is the best way to be in that building. Empty-headed, task-focused, a body doing a job. And then I heard the voice again, not from the atrium, from the food court. Darcy. My name. Said the way you'd say someone's name to get their attention, casually, like I'd walked past a friend in the food court and they were calling me over. Except the voice was wet, that same waterlogged resonance, and it came from the Sparrow. I did not look at the Sparrow. I kept my eyes on the table in front of me and I felt every nerve in my body light up like a circuit board, and I very calmly, very slowly, picked up the radio. Security. Something in the food court just said my name. Over. A pause. Wells's voice. Where in the food court? Sparrow. Is there visible water? I didn't want to look. I didn't want to look because looking meant turning toward the Sparrow, and the voice had come from the Sparrow, and I thought about the girl in the mirror, the teenager with no shoes, smiling down into something wonderful. And I thought about the janitor in '93 who just walked in like the water was calling him home. But I looked. Quickly. A glance. The Sparrow counter was wet. Water was running across it in a thin, even sheet, like someone had poured a pitcher across the stainless steel surface. And the water was flowing off the edge of the counter and onto the floor. And it was pooling, and in the pool on the floor, I could see. Not clearly, not directly, just in the edge of my vision, movement. Shapes, like looking at fish in a pond from a distance. Things moving under a surface. I looked away. There's water on the Sparrow counter and floor. I think there are impressions in it. I'm not looking directly. Over. Leave the food court now. Do not run. Walk at a normal pace. Do not look at any reflective surfaces as you exit, including the floor if it's wet. I walked out. Normal pace. Eyes forward. Behind me, I heard the sound of the water spreading. Not dripping, not flowing, but spreading, like a stain expanding across fabric. And under the spreading, the fountain sound. Always the fountain sound. The building's heartbeat. I made it to the corridor. The floor was dry. I kept walking. And then, from the food court behind me, receding but clear, Darcy, I'm so tired of looking down. That was the moment. That was my moment. The hinge, the point where a smart person, where Bethany, where anyone with survival instincts that hadn't been beaten down by $19.50 an hour and compound interest would have walked out the service entrance and never come back. I radioed Wells. I told her what the voice said. I asked her what it meant. The impressions are looking down because that's their orientation. They're looking into the deeper water, the spring, the source. Why? Because that's where they're being pulled. The upwelling doesn't just bring water up, Darcy. It takes things down, the impressions. The people who looked, who were captured. They're suspended, held in the upper layers. But the current wants to pull them deeper. The only thing keeping them in the shallow water, the visible water, is attention. Our attention. Living eyes, nearby, not looking but present. That's what keeps them close to the surface. So, when she said she's tired of looking down, she's tired of resisting the pull. She's been looking down into the source for 28 years, and the only thing anchoring her is the fact that someone is in the building, nearby, alive, refusing to look at her. If she stops looking down, if she looks up, if any of them look up, what happens? They make eye contact with whoever is in the building, direct visual contact through the water surface, and the person they lock onto goes in, not walks in, goes in, instantly. One moment you're standing on terrazzo, the next you're in the pool, and the pool is not 18 inches deep for you. The pool is whatever the source is. And we don't know what the source is. We have never been able to measure the depth. So the rules aren't protecting me. The rules are protecting them. The people in the fountain, they're holding on by looking down, and the only thing that helps them hold on is knowing someone alive is nearby and safe. If we abandon the site, they lose the anchor. They look up. And the next person who walks into this building, a realtor, a demolition worker, a kid who breaks in on a dare, gets taken. The rules keep you from becoming one of them, Darcy, but they also keep them from becoming something worse. I started to understand the architecture of what I was inside. Not a haunting, not a monster, a system, a water table with properties that shouldn't exist, running through limestone and glacial till under a parking lot in Hancock County, Indiana, surfacing through a spring that someone paved over and decorated and surrounded with a Walden Books and eclairs and a Sparrow, because that's what we do in this country. We build commerce on top of everything, even the things that should never be built on, especially the things that should never be built on, because land is land and revenue is revenue, and nobody asks what's underground until the floor is wet. The fountain wasn't the problem. The fountain was the interface, the point where the water surfaced and the impressions surfaced with it. The fountain was the visible edge of something that went down, way down, farther than wells, farther than aquifer, into whatever geological or hydrological or other than geological space the source occupied. And the source was hungry, not malicious, hungry in the way gravity is hungry. A pull, a draw, a force that wanted things to come closer and go deeper. The impressions, Shelby Linden, the maintenance worker, the others, God knows how many others across however many decades before anyone was keeping track. They were caught in between, not dead, not alive. Held in the water like insects in amber, oriented downward because downward was where the current pulled. Resisting because somewhere in whatever consciousness a water impression has, they didn't want to go deeper. And me. I was the weight on their end of the rope, the living, breathing, not looking presence that said, "You are seen, you are near the surface, you don't have to let go." I was the least important person in the building, and also the only person keeping it from becoming a sinkhole that swallowed anyone who came near. September. The expansion continued. Every week, another unit went wet. The black plastic sheeting appeared on more gates. My route contracted. By mid-September, I was cleaning the Sears wing, the south end of the south corridor, and the custodial room. That was it. Everything else was either off-limits or actively wet. The sounds changed too. Not just the fountain anymore. Water running in the walls, dripping from ceiling tiles that shouldn't have had moisture behind them. And the voices. Plural now, always plural. Overlapping like conversations in a restaurant. That wet, distorted murmur. Never quite words except when they said my name, which they did more and more frequently, casually, conversationally. The way you'd say someone's name when they walked into a room. Darcy. Hey, Darcy. Darcy, it's warm down here. I didn't respond. The rules didn't say not to respond, but Wells told me not to, and I didn't. I started sleeping badly, not because of nightmares, because of the sound. I could hear the fountain in my apartment constantly now, not loud, never loud, but constant, like tinnitus, like the memory of a sound that won't release. I ran white noise machines. I slept with the TV on. Nothing covered it. It was in a frequency below or above or beside what machines could mask, because it wasn't a sound in the air. It was a sound in the water. And I was 70% water, like every human being. And the sound was finding the water in me and ringing it like a bell. I called Bethany in Louisville. She picked up on the second ring. "You need to quit," she said. "Darcy, you need to quit right now." "I know." "So quit." "I can't." "Why?" And I told her about the impressions, and about Shelby Linden looking down, about the anchor, about what happens if I leave and nobody replaces me. Bethany was quiet for a long time. "That's not your responsibility," she said. "You didn't put those people in the water. You didn't build the mall. You didn't dig the fountain. You're a cleaning lady, Darcy. You mop floors. This isn't your... If I leave and someone else walks into that building and gets taken, that is my responsibility. Because I knew. So tell someone. Tell the county. Tell the EPA. Tell literally anyone whose job it is to handle whatever this is." "Who handles this? What department? What agency? Who do I call and say the water table under a dead mall in Hancock County is eating people? And I know because a woman named Wells told me on a two-way radio? Then it's not yours to carry." "Bethany, she's 14, in the water. She's been 14 for 28 years. She's looking down and she's holding on. And the only reason she hasn't let go is because I show up 5 nights a week and push a mop bucket through the building and she can hear my footsteps and she knows someone's there." Bethany started crying. I'd never heard her cry before. It was quiet, compressed, the crying of someone who doesn't want to be heard. "You can't save her," Bethany said. "I know. But I can keep showing up. October. I need to tell you about October because October is when I broke a rule. Not the mirror rule, not the looking rule. A different one. One that mattered more than I understood. On October 14th, a Tuesday, I arrived for my shift and the clipboard was not by the door. Rule 1. If there is no clipboard, do not enter. Radio security and wait in your car. I radioed. No response. I waited 10 minutes and radioed again. No response. I waited 30 minutes. An hour. The SEC channel was dead, not static. Dead. Silence. Like the radio wasn't even connecting to a frequency. I should have left. The rules were clear. No clipboard, no entry. But I could hear the fountain. From the parking lot, from inside my car with the windows up and the engine running, I could hear it. And it sounded different. Faster. The cascading had an urgency to it, a rhythm like breathing that's getting quicker, and under it I heard or felt. It was hard to separate hearing from feeling at this point. A sound like muffled screaming, not one voice, many, rising. They were looking up. I knew it the way you know your own name. Something had changed, something had shifted. The anchor was slipping, and the impressions were losing their grip, and their faces were turning upward, and if they broke the surface with their eyes open, and there was no one in the building. The next person who came near this place was gone. A realtor, a demo crew, a teenager on a dare, a cop doing a drive-by check. Anyone. The first person whose eyes met that water. I went in without the clipboard. The service entrance was unlocked. The hallway was dark. Not 40%. Not emergency. Dark. I turned on my flashlight and the beam caught moisture on the walls. Not dripping. Sheeting. Water running down the drywall in smooth, continuous curtains, like the building was sweating, like the building was underwater, and the pressure was forcing water through every pore. The sound was enormous. The fountain amplified, reverberating, filling every corridor, every room, every cubic foot of dead retail space with that heavy, cascading, living sound. And the voices were screaming. Not at me. Not words. Just screaming, the way you scream when you're falling, when the thing you were holding on to lets go. I walked the route, not clockwise. I went straight for the atrium because the atrium was the center. The atrium was the fountain. The fountain was the interface. And if the impressions were surfacing, I needed to be there. I needed to be the anchor. I needed to be seen. I entered the atrium and the fountain was overflowing. Water pouring over all 3 tiers and sheets, not the gentle cascade of normal operation, but a surge, a flood, the pump system pushing at maximum or the spring itself surging upward. The planter ring was submerged. Water spread across the terrazzo in a widening circle. Warm body temperature, just like the portrait studio. And in the water on the floor, in the thin film spreading toward me, I could see them, not in a mirror, not indirectly. I could see them in the water on the floor, moving under the surface of a 1/4 inch of liquid that should not have been able to contain a reflection, let alone a figure, let alone dozens of figures. They were swimming, crawling, moving toward the edges of the water, toward the place where the water met dry floor, toward the surface. Their faces were up. I could see their eyes. I looked at the ceiling. I looked at the ceiling and I shouted. Not words, just sound, just my voice, a living voice in a building full of water and memory. I shouted and the echoes bounced off the skylight and the storefronts and the wet walls, and I could feel the impressions pause, feel them register the vibration, a living thing. A person. Here. I'm here, I said. I'm here, I'm not looking, I'm here. The screaming subsided, not stopped. Subsided, like a tide pulling back. I walked to the planter ring. The water was up to my ankles. It was warm, and it moved against my skin with a current that had no business existing in a flooded mall atrium. And in the water I could feel pressure. Not physical, attentional, the pressure of being watched by dozens of pairs of eyes that were inches below a surface I could not look at. I stood there. I looked at the ceiling, at the skylight, at the dark sky above the glass. I stood in the water with the impressions looking up at me, and I did not look down. Darcy. Shelby's voice. I don't know how I knew it was hers. It was younger than the others, closer. Darcy, I can see you. Don't look at me, I said. Look down. Please, look back down. I've been looking down for so long. I know. But you have to keep looking down. If you look at me, I know what happens. A pause. The water lapped at my shins. I know what happens, and I'm so tired, Darcy. The water goes all the way down. I can see the bottom now. I couldn't always, but it's been so many years and the water's gotten clearer and I can see it, and it's so far down and there's light down there. There's warm light. And I think if I let go, it might be okay. I don't know if it's okay. I can't tell you that. Nobody can. A sound that might have been a laugh. 14 years old. 28 years in the water. Is someone going to keep coming? After you? Is someone going to be here? I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes, of course. Someone will always be here. But I thought about Alliance and their contracts and their quarterly reviews, and I thought about Director Wells and her channel going dead. And I thought about the economy, the real economy, the one where malls die and cleaning ladies are the last heartbeat in the building. And even that heartbeat is negotiable. I'm going to try, I said. Okay. The water receded. Not quickly. Over the course of an hour, slowly, the flood pulling back toward the fountain, the pool settling, the terrazzo drying at the edges. I stood at the planter ring and I didn't move, and I didn't look down. My feet went numb in the warm water, and my neck ached from staring up and my eyes dried out from not blinking. And I stood there. At 4 a.m., the active window closed, the pressure dropped. The voices went quiet. The fountain returned to its normal cascade. That heavy, thick, steady sound. The water on the floor was gone. My shoes were dry. If I hadn't been standing there, I would not have believed any of it had happened. I went to custodial. The clipboard was on the hook by the service entrance. It had not been there when I entered. The radio worked. Wells's voice came through on my first attempt. "Darcy, are you all right? Where were you?" "We had a systemic failure. The monitoring equipment went down at approximately 10:30 p.m. We've been working to restore it. Are you in the building?" "I've been in the building for 5 hours. I went in without the clipboard." Silence. The impressions almost surfaced. The fountain surged. I went to the atrium and I stood at the planter ring and I talked to them. One of them, the girl, Shelby. A long silence. "You entered the water." "It was on the floor. I couldn't avoid it." "Darcy, are you experiencing any visual disturbances? Any sounds that seem to originate from water sources around you?" "I've been hearing the fountain in my apartment for 2 months. You know that." "Any new symptoms?" "Anything since tonight." I thought about it. I took stock of my body, my vision, my hearing. Everything seemed normal. Tired and scared and normal. "No," I said. Okay. I need you to leave the building now. Take 3 days off. We're going to recalibrate the site. When you return, there will be an updated protocol sheet." "Will it still be on a typewriter?" "Darcy, I'm asking because the last protocol was written before I was born, and it almost got someone killed tonight. Me. It almost got me killed. So if you're going to update it, maybe involve the person who's actually in the building." Another silence, then, "Come to a meeting. Friday. I'll send you an address." The address was a State Farm insurance office in Greenfield, 3 miles from the mall. I pulled into the lot at 2 p.m. on a Friday and walked into what looked like a completely normal insurance agency. Desks, brochures, a water cooler, framed photos of agents shaking hands with families. Wells was in the back office. She was in her 60s, gray-haired, wearing a blazer and reading glasses. She looked like someone who sold whole life policies to farmers. There were 2 other people in the room, a man about my age with a USGS lanyard around his neck, and a younger woman with a laptop who didn't look up when I entered. "This is our monitoring team for the Greenfield site," Wells said. "Dr. Adler handles the hydrological data. Rena manages the sensor network." 3 people, I said. "This whole operation is 3 people and a cleaning lady." 4 people. And yes. Who pays for this? The Kirchner estate set up a trust before Lyle Kirchner died. It's not generous, but it's consistent. The mall's property taxes are paid through the trust. The alliance contract is paid through the trust. Our salaries are paid through the trust. For how long? The trust has approximately 8 years of funding remaining at current levels. And then? And then we hope the county acquires the property and we can embed the protocols in whatever comes next. Or the source goes dormant. It's done it before. There are records of a similar upwelling in this area going back to the 1840s. A natural spring that early settlers avoided because livestock wouldn't drink from it. It went dormant for nearly a century before resurfacing when they broke ground for the mall. And if it doesn't go dormant and the money runs out? Wells took off her glasses. Then we have a spring in central Indiana that captures and retains human consciousness through visual contact with its surface water, and no institutional framework to manage it. And anyone who builds on that land, drinks from that water table, or stumbles onto the site is at risk. And the impressions. The people already in the water. They stop being anchored, and they go down into the source, and we lose them entirely. And we don't know what happens when the source has them. We don't know what it does with what it takes. Dr. Adler spoke for the first time. The water chemistry is unlike anything in the USGS database. The mineral content is normal. The temperature is normal. The flow rate is normal. By every metric we can measure, it's just water. But it doesn't behave like water. It retains thermal impressions for weeks. It resists evaporation in enclosed spaces, and its acoustic properties. He trailed off. It shouldn't carry sound the way it does. It carries sound like it's denser than it is, like there's more of it than there is. Like there's depth that isn't physically present, Rena said, still looking at her laptop. Yes, Adler said. Like the water is deeper than the container it's in. Every container, every time. They gave me the new protocols. Printed this time, updated for the current expansion pattern, with specific instructions for the additional wet zones and a revised route that was barely a route at all. More like a list of the 4 remaining dry areas and the order in which to visit them. But they also gave me something else. A choice. Wells said, "We can replace you. We have the budget for another Alliance contractor. Someone who doesn't know the history, who follows the laminated sheet, who does the job. And if the fountain surges again, if the monitoring fails again, someone who doesn't know will walk in blind, and they'll look down, and they'll be in the water. That's a risk we've managed for 30 years. You've managed it by losing people. The janitor in 93 got lucky. Shelby Linden didn't. The maintenance worker didn't. You've managed it the way a net manages fish. It catches most of them. What are you proposing?" I didn't have a proposal. I had a feeling, which is not something I'm used to trusting because feelings don't pay rent, and feelings don't fix anything. And feelings are what people tell you to follow when they don't have practical advice. But the feeling was this. I had stood in the water. I had talked to Shelby. I had heard her say she could see the bottom and there was light and she was tired. And I had told her I would try to keep coming. And that was either a promise or it wasn't. And I have spent my entire life being the kind of person who doesn't make promises because promises are for people who can afford to keep them. But I made this one. "I'm staying," I said, "but I want to be part of this, not contracted through Alliance, not following a sheet someone else wrote. I want to understand the system. I want to be in the meetings. I want the radio to work every single night, or I want a phone number I can call. And I want a plan for what happens in 8 years when the trust runs out." Wells looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. "That was 6 months ago. I still clean the mall. My route is down to 3 areas now. The Sears Wing, a section of the South Corridor, and Custodial. Everything else is wet. The black plastic sheeting covers most of the storefronts and the food court is off limits entirely. The sound of running water fills the building like blood fills a body, constant, systemic everywhere. But the fountain is stable. The impressions are down. Shelby is looking down. They're all looking down. The anchor holds. I go to meetings on Fridays at the State Farm office. I've read the hydrological reports, and I don't understand most of them, but I understand enough. I've helped Rena redesign the sensor network to provide better early warning for surges. I've started documenting the acoustic changes in each wing so Adler can track expansion rates. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a director. I'm a 43-year-old woman with an unused dental hygiene degree and a mop. But I'm the one in the building. I'm the one they hear. And that counts for something, even if I can't put it on a resume. The fountain sound follows me home. It's in my apartment all the time now. I've stopped trying to mask it. I listen to it the way you listen to rain. Not because you want to, but because it's there and resistance takes more energy than acceptance. Sometimes, late at night, in the near silence of my bedroom in Shelbyville, 11 miles from the mall, I hear Shelby's voice in it. Just my name. Just Darcy. Quiet. Almost fond. like she's checking. I don't answer, but I think she knows I hear her. I'm telling you this for a reason, and the reason isn't entertainment. The reason is that the trust has 8 years left, and I'm 43, and I can do this job for another 20 years maybe, but not alone and not without infrastructure. The reason is that there are places in this country, in your state, in your county, maybe in your town, where the water does things it shouldn't, where springs surface in basements and don't behave and don't evaporate and carry sounds that shouldn't carry. And the people managing those places are underfunded and understaffed and tired and aging, and they are holding lines that you don't know exist because the lines are working. The fountain is still running. The water is still deep. The girl is still looking down. I'll be there tonight, and tomorrow night, and the night after that. If you're in Hancock County, if you drive past Greenfield Crossing on State Road 9 and you see one car in the parking lot at 2 a.m., that's me. Don't stop, don't come in, don't look at the building too long because the skylight is right above the fountain, and on clear nights the water catches the moonlight and reflects it up through the glass. And if you're in the parking lot at the right angle, you might catch a glimpse of the surface, and the surface is where they are, and they are always looking for eyes. Just drive past. Know that someone's inside. Know that someone's holding the line. And if you know anyone who mops floors for a living and isn't afraid of water, and can follow rules without needing to know why, tell them there's a job opening in Indiana. The pay is $23 an hour now. Benefits through the Kirchner Trust. Night shift, 5 days a week. The only requirement is that you never, ever look down.